Doors closing.
And now, something completely different.
Happy Hour. Happy Hour.
What's up? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, and from the Danny and Megan show on 97.9 WRMF, the one and only Danny Meyers is on Hoppe Hour. What's up, bro?
What's happening, Ryan? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. So we were just talking off air, but I wanted to save it for the air. Florida is beautiful. I know you're in West Palm, correct? I'm in Tampa.
Yes, West Palm.
And you've lived in Raleigh, you worked in Roanoke. What's it like going from kind of those type of weather? Like, what was the weather like there compared to Florida, obviously?
Well, I grew up in upstate New York.
Oh,
so
really?
Wow. I made my way all the way down. So I went from 3 feet of snow and sub-zero to in North Carolina and Virginia, where, you know, it's not so cold, but you have the four seasons to, you know, now down here in Florida, it's summer all the time, baby.
I was a runner-up for the position when Zach left the morning thing, and they went with somebody else, and I think it was meant to be that I didn't leave Florida, but what would it have been like if I lived in Roanoke? What was Roanoke like?
You know, Roanoke is a great smaller city. They've got a really good like downtown vibe. They've got a real foodie culture there. And Virginia Tech is like an hour, not even an hour away. So you have kind of college town stuff going on too. So yeah, it's a good place. It's a good smaller city. And
what was it like working there, being like kind of a local celebrity, especially when you're in kind of those close quarters? Like, how often, let's say you go out for coffee or you go on a date, how often were people recognizing you?
In Roanoke, pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, and that radio station too, they did a lot of TV ads and billboards. So, you know, sometimes being on the radio, you can kind of be anonymous until people hear you talking. But there, we were very... our faces were everywhere too. So yeah, so you could kind of, you had to really like watch what you were saying. If you had a few drinks and you were at a music festival or something and you were getting a little loud, you know, the next day you're like, uh-oh, you know.
That was my life in Cleveland when I worked for Rotor. Sure. It was almost like the Truman Show kind of, where I would be talking to my mom about something, and like, I remember the next day they called in and somebody at Target heard me talking about like my meds for like my ADHD. And that was when, after that, I literally, if I was talking to someone on the phone or they would call me and I'm in the parking lot, I'm like, wait 1 second, let me get into the car. Then I got to make sure the car door's closed. And yeah,
you only get burned like that one time. For me, it was in a restaurant, and I mean, the conversation was not even that exciting.
Yeah.
And a listener was a couple of tables over, and they took notes on everything that was said.
Yeah.
And then they called it into the show the next day, and they said, you know, it was incredibly boring, you know, that I'm incredibly boring outside of work, but it was also incredibly creepy that you are taking literal notes on what it is that I'm saying, you know, we're just out to dinner.
Well,
yeah, you definitely have to adjust.
You know what's funny is it's just like you got to always watch what you're saying, but at the same time, I always know when I'm getting recognized, probably also because of my height, but there's this thing people do where it's like they're trying to put together, are you that person? And it's almost like you're a hot girl getting checked out. I always know, because there'll be times because there's a lot of like, rednecks, blue collar people that know me from my previous radio life. And it's always, I'll get a report, oh yeah, this person saw you, and they never come up to say hi, but I can tell because they will just look at you for 20 seconds and not say a word. Yeah,
for sure. Unless there's alcohol, you know, if you're at a festival or you're in a bar, then people get real confident. But yeah, if it's sober, then people tend to just kind of watch you.
Did you ever have it where someone at the end of your experience with the person said, I know who you are? Recently I had it. I went to the DMV, and this guy just looks like he would listen to my old job. It's kind of like a burly guy with a beard, heavy set, looks like he drinks beer right when he goes home. And he was like being kind of Like, okay, he was cool. He helped me out. And at the end, he's like, are you Ryan Hoppe? And I was like, I knew you knew who I was. Yeah,
exactly. Because they're kind of sizing you up. I guess that the thing that will forever kind of get, I mean, you're talking about it too, like where you're out of that show and they're still recognizing you for that show.
Yeah.
And that happened last weekend. I mean, I left K92 and that morning show 7 years ago. And I was at a music festival for our country radio station here in West Palm Beach. And there were a couple that had transplanted from Roanoke and they were like, are you the one? And I'm like, yeah, it's me. So it's weird when it's, kind of, Myrtle Beach. I don't know, have you ever been to Myrtle Beach in South Carolina?
Not for like 25 years, but I've been there.
Okay. So like a lot of places in the Northeast and all over the East Coast go to Myrtle Beach for like a cheap kind of easy beach vacation. But that was always the place where it was like I could just be in Myrtle Beach and get recognized, even though it's 6 hours from Roanoke, 3 hours from Raleigh. But it's just because everybody was going there from those places.
The hardest thing is there's a few people I used to work with that kind of got mad that I wanted to do my own thing, and I split and did my own thing. And we didn't really have, it was kind of a breakup. And the worst is when it's like somebody, it's like that saying, don't meet your heroes. It's awful when they have an image of how great the person is when it's just a narcissist. And they'll be like, have you talked to, I'll just say it, have you talked to Mike Kelt at all? And I'm like, haven't talked to him in 3 years. Why? He seems so cool. And you don't want to like ruin it for them, but it's like,
right,
I'm not cool with him, like it's funny.
Right. That wasn't my experience.
Now, what was it like working in Raleigh?
Raleigh was really great. I mean, that was kind of my dream, when you're talking about, and I'm sure you have them too. It's like, all right, this is my dream job. And, one day you hope to manifest your dream job. And I think pretty much the whole time I was in Roanoke, Zach and I would watch what Bob and the Showgram were doing on G105. And we're just like, all right, when Bob decides he wants to do something else, like that's the job we want, that's where we want to go. And I didn't get to go kind of directly there. So, it was like I joined iHeart and they put me in Virginia Beach for a couple of years. And I kept saying that, if this job in Raleigh comes up, then that's what I'd really want to do. And then it happened and I got to do it. So it was great. The thing that wasn't great is I started and 3 weeks after starting there, it was COVID and everything locked down.
Oh, that's not good.
So it was like, all right, you get your dream job and then, the world is ending, and that kind of affected things for probably the first full year that I was there. Was kind of under COVID, and, but toward the end, it was amazing. I was working with the best team and the city is so great. It's kind of like a bigger Roanoke in a way where they've got a great community, a lot of transplants. So you're talking to, all sorts of different people and I loved it. I loved Raleigh.
I'm glad you brought up Bob and the Showgram. I have family in Winston-Salem, and then I have some family in Raleigh and Charlotte. And whenever I would go down there, I would listen to all the shows in North Carolina. And he had some of the craziest radio I've ever heard. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, I started listening when I was like, a kid. And people would send me tapes, or we would go on vacation to Myrtle Beach. I would record it on my little, boombox recorder and listen to Bob and the Showgram. But yeah, absolutely. Some of the stuff they did, and Zach and I would borrow some of those ideas and recreate them in Roanoke. But it was crazy, but also very creative, very innovative. A lot of original stuff that they did. That will probably never get done again on the radio.
I know. I've been thinking about that lately. I did kind of a State of the Union on my normal podcast about radio, and I didn't really hold back because I don't feel like holding back anymore. But
right.
I tried to be positive. I tried to, because I love radio. I'm from Chicago. It's when radio was great. It was when I was growing up.
Yeah.
But for the first time ever, dude, ever since probably like seeing one of my friends, Johnny Dare, just get let go for no reason, I think
Absolutely.
I'm officially on the bandwagon of being concerned about radio. Before, whenever you go to the boot camp and you have drunken talks, everybody tries to be positive, but with what happened this week at Odyssey and then even with Cumulus, I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I get that. And even when I joined iHeart, that was part of the main incentive to joining up with them, is I really felt like, all right, if there is a future for radio, they're investing so much in their app and they're investing so much in, other things. So it's like, I think I need to get in that
That's
culture.
what I thought. Yeah, me too.
So that I can learn. So this sounds like we had a similar experience, or it's like you get on the inside and you're like, nah, they don't know what's going on either.
The most crazy thing for me, what drove me off this wall is that I do kind of a hyper off this wall show. Like, it's like, I never know what I'm going to say. My interviews are long and like, God bless them. It's what they want to do, and that's fine. But they just stick to a formula all over, and it's like what drives me off this. And I'm not trying to talk smack, but what drives me nuts about radio is they do the same thing everywhere, and then there's countless Reddit topics making fun of radio, and it brings in mediocre results, and then they're like, why is everybody listening to Joe Rogan, or why is everybody flocking to video podcasts? And it's like, because that's where personalities are shining. And what makes me so mad is when you think about the 90s and 2000s, it seemed like, because I was younger, so I wasn't in radio yet, but it seemed like radio took risks. Radio was like, we're going to put it all in. But now that they're putting in half-ass results are happening, and then they're like, why are we not as popular as dude, I could go on all day about it.
No, and I could too, because I love radio just like you, and I want to see it thrive. I want to see it reinvent and be whatever it can be, because the audiences are still big, the cumulative radio stations. So you have the ability to still impact a lot of people, but to your point, there's just not really an investment in the future. A lot of mediocrity out there. And, when you're watching what's going on with Odyssey and Cumulus and iHeart, and with what they're doing to the talent and the content generators, it's like, well, what is the end game here? Are you just trying to squeeze every dollar out of the local radio stations in anything that's not a top 10 market and then turn out the light at some point, and that's, you're talking about being negative, but that's the way I feel. And after being on the inside with iHeart, is that is the end game that they're just not talking about. That
and
they really
the way they let people go, Jack Harris, 50 years in Tampa radio, right out of Vietnam War, and they walk him out and don't even give him a goodbye. That's what drives me nuts. Is at least Odyssey on Friday let Johnny Dare do one last show. That was cool. I saw online that his old co-host of 27 years wasn't let in. That's not really cool. But they at least let him do a goodbye show. But and then they wonder why they alienate all. That's what happened to Kevin and Bean during COVID, or Kevin in the Morning. But they don't realize, I think what happens is all these, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, all these executives come in and out. It's a revolving door.
Yeah.
And they don't, a lot of these people will come from a different state, and they don't realize the connection that this radio host had on people's lives. And they go, oh, that person's making six figures, they got to go. But they don't realize that that's what was bringing in the magic.
But absolutely. No, you're right. And I think the jaded look at that is because the end game is just to be top 10 markets, or maybe even smaller, maybe top 4 markets. And then everything else is just, national platforms out into local signals. And a lot of radio stations are sold off or turned off at some point in the future.
So a lot of my radio friends and shows I like work for Hubbard. Rizzuto Show, David Mahoney, and then my old boss from Cox Media Group, Keith Lawless, runs Chicago's Hubbard. So I've heard nothing but great things about it. How has your experience with Hubbard been?
Yeah, I would echo, I'm sure, exactly what they would say. The talent focus on Hubbard versus what's going on with the other big companies. Because Hubbard's, like what, 3 or 4? Like it's up there with the, in terms of size and audiences with the other companies. But being a family-owned company, I mean, they're so focused on their communities. They really are like hyper focused on serving their communities and growing and doing podcasts and doing video. And, like we have a team show in the afternoon, in Market 49 with Hubbard, because they really do feel that the future growth in radio is in content, is in talent, which, is obviously very different than the other companies. But that's why I came here, at that crossroads. It was not my choice to leave Raleigh. I was witness to like 3 really big cuts across the company, and then it came around. I was like, really? Okay, all right. This is what it's like. And at that point, it was kind of hard, because it's like, what do I want to do now? And it was quite clear that I needed to go somewhere. It was similar to Roanoke, because Zach and I had worked in bigger markets, but it was like we just had a good vibe off the local owner, Leonard Wheeler, in Roanoke. And we're like, this is where, we really can go and grow a show. And so it was kind of a similar path here. And Randy West was the person that I'd known for a lot of years. And so it was like, it was kind of an easy choice.
What are some of your favorite memories of the K92 morning thing?
Oh God, because it was 14 years there, and it got to the point where like it was one of those shows that was number 1 birth to death. Like you just don't. That doesn't happen that often, and so once it got to that point, it was like, all right, I think it's time for me to do something else. But like, I mean, it was such a great time, and there were so many different like eras. Because when Zach and I started there, we were like in our mid-20s, right? And so in the beginning, it was just like we didn't know what we were doing, and maybe we copy bits from Bob and the Showgram or other shows and do that. But then once we were there for a couple of years, we started like kind of inventing some of our own stuff, and one of the things that probably is a standout memory, and this is going to take it back. I mean, you were probably like 9 when Britney Spears shaved her head.
I was 14, 13-ish. Yeah.
14, okay.
Close enough.
So, but I mean, that's something that like, I mean, it's an iconic moment, and everybody remembers. If you were alive, you remember what was going on at that time. And so we decided to tap into that and do a promotion on the air where if people raised $500 for, what, I can't remember what cancer charity that we were doing, but it was a cancer charity. So if you raised $500, then we'll shave your head on the air. And so it just became this like, and we thought maybe we'd get like one person to do it and that would be a win. But we had over 10, and it was mostly women.
Oh, wow.
That did it. And it transformed into this like powerful, like, I'm doing this, I'm shaving my head because my sister has breast cancer. And so it just was one of those like radio moments. Why radio is so great, because you start with a simple idea and it's live radio, and it just transforms, and it became very heavy and very, very powerful. And it was the front page of the local paper, the Roanoke Times, the next day. And I mean, that was, for me, that was probably my number 1, like, most memorable moment that I've ever had in radio.
Now, don't get mad at me, but I was a big Opie and Anthony fan. And I remember when they went after you guys, and it was always weird.
Oh my God, I know.
It was always weird going to the boot camp and being like, Opie and Anthony made fun of you. Opie and Anthony made fun of, like, when I was going there in 2013, 14 for the first, when I was the intern, it was during their last few years when they were doing Jocktober, and it was the funniest thing. I'm like, they made fun of this person. What was it like? Because I've been a part of many radio wars,
sure.
And Woody out in Los Angeles gave me the best advice in 2018. From 2015 to 2018, I would address the radio hosts that were talking smack about me. Woody said, I never mention them because I don't want to give them free publicity. And if they're going after me, I'm obviously doing something right. So what was the approach you guys had when Opie and Anthony were attacking you?
Yeah, I think it just was not, I mean, being a female targeted pop radio station, there really wasn't a space that we addressed it on the air. I don't remember ever addressing it on the air. I thought it was kind of cool. You know, it was like, all right, you know what? On a national show, you know, on Sirius to be, you know, clowned like that. It was like, you know, this is kind of cool. And I always think that it was because Eric Nagel, who was the producer on the show, was like, my first radio show that I ever did full time was a night show on WPLJ in New York City. And he was like, and he was a regular caller. Like, I think he was in high school or, you know, in college at the time, and he was a radio fan. And I was like, you motherfucker, that you know, here you are. It's like, I know you've been following me, and that's why I'm on your radar here in Roanoke, Virginia, and you decided you're going to do that.
Eric Nagel is he's very complicated. I'll just say it. He I thought he was
like I thought it was one of those things. I'm like, I think that was why we got on the radar, was because, you know, Eric and I were somewhat friendly. Like, I mean, you know, you talk to your callers that, you know, call in on, especially on a nighttime show, you know, because you're playing music and you've got a lot of downtime. So, you know, you talk with these people, and I'm like, yeah, I think that's why. I think he was like kind of keeping an eye on us, and that's why we made it in the mix.
Eric's a weird dude because, like, for 8 years, me and him were pretty tight. And then he, like, flipped out on me and was, like, critiquing me a lot and then, like, leaving rude comments. So I actually ended up blocking him because I was like, this is ridiculous. It was just getting out of hand because what would happen is he would do something, and then a lot of these listeners from 102.5 The Bone that also knew Opie and Anthony. So, like, here's an example. So I said, I don't mean to be a Scrooge, but I would rather listen to Wham sing Last Christmas than Swift. And I posted that, but I said Scrooge. Not Scrooge. And he was like, and he said, and that's why you haven't taken the next level in radio or something. And I was like, all right. Something where I was like, you know what, dude? Like, I'm employed. Like, and I'm not even trying to be a dick, but I was like, you know what? Like, bye. Like, Opie and Anthony ended 10 years ago. Goodbye. So
right, yeah,
it's weird that whole Gen X era of just being mean just got really old.
You're right, and there was definitely more of a culture of competition that thankfully is not really the case. And I mean, I know it's your experience, it's my experience that, like, the radio community is much more supportive than competitive, you know, on the talent side. Maybe on the management, maybe in the upper areas a little different, but on the talent side, you know, because, you know, we're kind of fighting for what we love, you know, we're fighting for this business. And so it's rare, you know, and when I first got into radio, there was more of that, you know, because I started in my little town in upstate New York when I was 14 in high school. And I remember watching it, and these, like, tiny town radio stations, like these, like, competitions between people. But then, you know, working in bigger markets, it mostly wasn't that way, you know? So I just think it kind of went away over time.
Yeah, Tampa's weird, man. Cause when I moved here in 2015, I began.
And rock is different too. You know, you've worked a lot in rock radio, and like, you know, that's part of why people on the talent side, you know, listeners like love that. So so I guess
Bubba is the GOAT at causing trouble. My first promotions event, I really had to go to the bathroom, and it was at Amalie Arena for a Tampa Bay Lightning game. And Bubba 98.7 was there, and I had to go to the bathroom, so I left the tent by itself for a minute. And Bubba had one of his interns take a picture, and he tweeted all the sponsors of the Bone and the president of iHeart and Calta, and was like, looks like the promo team doesn't care about the radio station. And this was like the second day I got hired, and I was like, you're a talented guy, but Tampa, man, Tampa's a weird market. I was talking to Kevin from KVJ last week, and Tampa hosts have tried to argue with KVJ because they claim that they took their ideas. There's just this weird thing about Tampa, man. I don't know if you've ever been, but
I visited. I interviewed when Randy West was there at Mix.
Oh, nice.
And I ended up not going to work there, obviously, but I mean, I like the town, and it is very different vibe than West Palm or Miami. Yeah, it's different.
Did you get any advice from KVJ when you joined WRMF?
To be honest, not really. I think because I've done it a while. I mean, so great. Like they are, talking about Bob and the Showgram. They're another show that I very much was a fan of from a distance, and
me too,
and listened to a lot of their stuff, KVJ, and so no, it's like it's just we're doing our thing in the afternoon, they're doing their thing in the morning, and we're very friendly. But no, there wasn't a whole lot of like, Virginia took us out to brunch. That was about it.
How has everything been going with you and Megan in the afternoon?
Great. Yeah, really good. It's a big adjustment from doing mornings, and some of the things that you're like, oh yeah, no, you get to sleep in and still do content. Oh, that's got to be so amazing. But I really do miss getting up and just doing it. Like that's something that I miss about doing mornings that I didn't think I would. Like it really surprises me that I'm like in the morning I'm like kind of just farting around. I'm like, I kind of miss being on the radio right now.
Really?
Yeah, it's weird. It's very weird. But the other side of it is that like it is a great quality of life. I mean, I get to go to lunch. I get to sleep in if I want to, which I don't. I'm still up at 6 o'clock in the morning, but yeah, and working with Megan because she was already here. And so, so it was like one of these things where she had a partner for just a couple of months and it didn't work out. And so I became available at that point. And so I was nervous about it because every other team that I've been a part of, like I've kind of chosen most of the people, like really it's been very much something that either I've been a part of or like I've made the decisions in terms of, the talent on the shows, and to just be like, all right, yeah, let's try this, somebody I didn't know. Like that was the first time and it worked out great. No, she's really, really fantastic.
And what I like about WRMF is the way you guys play throwbacks. Like I'm looking at the website right now, and you guys went from playing Bye 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 to There's Nothing Holding Me Back by Shawn Mendes. And as a true millennial, I love that. The fact that you guys embrace like throwbacks, because a lot of people are afraid of throwback radio, but that to me is like my dream, to do like a morning or afternoon show where I play throwbacks and then like talk, like almost like how our parents had classic hits. I truly believe if radio were to go all in on the throwback, then they're good,
Yeah, well, we'll see, because Hubbard just went all in on a throwback station that's like 90s and 2000s.
Oh, nice.
And Chicago. And
yeah, 100.3. Yeah. My old boss promotes or programs them, and I actually listened when I was up there, and it was the weirdest thing. I was driving around my hometown, and I was driving by my middle school, and Grills came on, and I was like, oh my God. I remember when my mom was driving me to school with B96 on and Eddie and Jobo. So it was the perfect way to it's always weird when you listen to those songs and you can like feel where you were when it came out.
Oh, for sure. And then, they on B96 in Chicago, they're calling it like gold top 40 or something, because they're heavy on throwbacks too, to try to jumpstart that station. So, so we'll see. But yeah, no, it's definitely something where, this station is just like so massive in this market. Yeah. And a lot of it is because of KVJ being so massive in this market. But then, the programmers have been great too. And they do a lot of research and, play the hits for here. And they do a good job with it. That's for sure. But yeah, it is fun doing the throwbacks. While we're taping this right now, I'm actually doing a voice track show on Sunny, which is our classic hit station.
Oh, nice.
The all 80s weekend. Yeah. And I only started doing that like maybe 6 weeks ago. And you're right. It is absolutely a blast. Like it's really fun to just go in there and play like 80s music. And it's a different vibe than, Gracie Abrams.
I'm really picky about my Chicago radio because I grew up on Steve Dahl, Brandmeier, Mancow, Eddie and Jobo, Drex. But the one person who has been doing it since I was a sophomore in high school, and I think is literally on his way to becoming a Chicago legend, is Fred. And I talk to Fred all the time. Fred's one of those guys, like how you said you listen to Bob and the Showgram or KVJ. Fred's a show I listen to all the time. Like I feel like I'm back home in Chicago. Like he And he's very talented in the fact that Chicago's a brutal market. You can't just be an outsider and try to come in and do a show. And there's something that he did where he just embraced Chicago, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I agree. And one of the other things about Fred that's so fun to listen to as a radio person, because he does the content and he is like a personality, but then he's also a jock, you know?
Yeah,
so it's like, you know, so you could hear him just having a blast, like talking up an intro and playing the throwbacks on Friday. It's like, so there's like a secondary level of enjoyment if you're in the business and like hearing that part of what Fred does too.
If you ever got an opportunity to kind of build like a syndicated empire, would you go for it?
I think I would now. You know, we had opportunities when Zach and I were doing the show in Roanoke, and we always said no. You know, we talked to Ace and TJ, and they were like, "No, you don't want to do this."
Yeah.
You know, they were very good. There were other people that we talked to at the time that were doing similar. You know, what it would be like a regional kind of small syndication thing, and I think I think they all said the same thing. No, it's more hassle and it's not, you know, you're not going to make any more money and it's a lot more hassle. So we always said no to it. But just because of where this business is now, I just don't think, I don't think you can say no to it anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
And speaking of Ace and TJ, Ace was one of my close mentors, and I actually got like 45,000 views on TikTok, just talking about the good of him. What were some of the memories you have with Ace? For me, it was he would hang out with me until 2 a.m., even though he was in his 40s at the time, at the morning show boot camp.
Yeah.
Ace was an amazing dude.
Amazing guy. I had because again, you know, like I was a fan of their show. We're in Roanoke, it's close, you know, and so it's like, all right, maybe we'll move, you know, Ace and TJ will move to a different station and we'll go to Charlotte. But their creativity on that show, you know, his ability as a storyteller. We're getting flight into Chicago for morning show boot camp a few years ago. And so my show, Zach and Monica and me, we were just waiting and Ace was there. And, you know, so we just decided to get a car together, and it was the funniest car ride, the stories, the storytelling. And I just was, you know, he was in the front seat and I remember sitting in the back seat going in my head, I'm like, I will never be able to tell a story like this. Like, this guy is such a brilliant storyteller and was so kind, you know, like he was just, you know, it was not like he was, you know, this big ego guy, you know, talking about himself and telling the story about himself. No, he was really humble and, like you said, a mentor, you know, and just what a loss. It just to me, I'm just like, you know, and I get it. I mean, he'd been through personal tragedies over the last several years that, you know, how do you get through that? I just don't know. But I have such high regard for he and TJ both. They were married to that market with that show.
I love that term, by the way. I love them.
They were, though. They really were. And I do too. That's the Jeff and Jer thing. I'm sure you saw that.
I remember 2013, I think might have been the first time they said it. That was the Kid Craddock year. I remember it clearly. I remember he was saying it. Dave Ryan was at the panel.
Yeah.
Rick Rumble was at the panel, I believe. I think Paul from Paul and Young Ron was too.
Yep.
Now, before I let you go, would I be able to get you to record a liner for me?
Yeah, sure.
Just say, hey, this is Danny Meyers from 97.9 WRMF, and you're listening to Hoppy Hour with Ryan Hoppe.
Sure.
All right, let me know.
Hey, this is Danny Meyers from 97.9 WRMF in West Palm Beach, and you're listening to Ryan Hoppe and the Hoppy Hour.
Perfect, bro. Now, how can people hear... That was awesome, dude. I really appreciate it. Now, Danny, how can people hear your show if they're not in West Palm Beach listening at 97.9?
WRMF.com or on our app. You know, Hubbard is very into every radio station has their own app. I mean, you can stream all the Hubbard stations on like Apple Music and Spotify, but you know, they want you to do the WRMF app. So I would say that.
Now, it's been a lot of fun having you at the show. You're going to the morning show boot camp, correct?
I have not confirmed, but I think it's 95%. I gotta go.
I think what I'm going to do, inside baseball for the listeners, morning show boot camps where all these radio people get drunk.
Yeah, we do.
Well, the thing is, I'm going to probably get a hotel off campus. I don't really feel like paying those prices because I'm already paying for the plane ticket. But I'll probably, I want to see if there's like an Airbnb downtown or something. I'll figure it out, but I'm definitely going. So I will see you there.
I think we have to. We got to commit.
Especially now with all the layoffs. I just want to see Mike McVay in person. I want to see Don Anthony. I think now, since I've almost not been there for a half a decade, I think it's time to show my face.
Yeah, I agree. And we both need to show our faces.
Oh, for sure. Danny Meyers, thank you very much for calling in the Hoppy Hour.
Anytime, Ryan.
All right. Thank you, bro.
See you, bud.
All right. Bye. And now was Danny Meyers from 97.9 WRMF as he called in the Hoppy Hour. Now, if you're listening to my voice and you want to hear more of my show is very similar to KVJ. I do two versions. One is kind of like a hyper morning zoo with throwback hip hop, and one is interviews with radio hosts. Go to every single major platform that has a podcast and search up Hoppy Radio, HOPPE Radio. This has been Hoppy Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppy, signing off. Goodbye.
TikTok, clocks a juke, we're playing cruel pranks. Hoppy's hour almost done. Feels like robbery in banks. Ryan Hoppy on the mic, dropping wisdom in streams. Syndicated sorrow, now it's time to shatter dreams. Oh, the Hoppy Hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilted rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair. But the laughter's growing dim. Eardrums mixing Hoppy like fingers without rings. DHX to FM, shout-outs hit the street, but soon the sound will vanish like shadows in the heat. Oh, the Hoppy Hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilting rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair. Phone lines buzzing, but the laughter's growing dim. Eardrums mixing Hoppy like fingers without rings. DHX to FM, shout-outs hit the street, but soon the sound will vanish like shadows in the heat. Oh, the Hoppy Hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilting rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair. Oh, life's just so unfair. Like clockwork to a show. Now it's time to face the silence like a TV on snow. Ryan Hoppy held the mic with humor so divine. The void left in our hearts wider than a canyon line. Empty speakers, silent time but coming to an end. Like a roller coaster stopping round the river's bend. Hoppy's jokes and jabs, these our daily grind. Now silence louder than the thoughts we can't rewind. Oh, the Hoppy Hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilting rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair. The Hoppy Hour is coming to a close. Radio waves fading like a wilting rose. Laughter and joy dissolving in the air, but we'll keep the rhythm. Oh, life's just so unfair.
Hoppy Hour. Hoppy Hour.
RyanHoppyRadio.com.
And like that, he's gone.
Whenever we're going outside, all I smell is poop.
I'll kick you in the nuts and we'll call it a day.
Hoppy Hour is now over. Hoppy Hour is now over. Game over. This concludes our broadcast day. Good night, and God bless America.
Doors closing.